Okay, welcome to 1FG Archives here on YouTube. This is Just Chatting Volume 3. On this segment, we're going to be talking about we're starting my countdown to my top 25 games of all time. We're going to be doing numbers 21 through 25. Let's get started. All right, so before we get started, as always, this is just an opinion. This is how I feel about games growing up and all that goodness. Um, these are games that have impacted me one way or another through my life. I've changed things, my perspective on just gaming in general, especially some of these ones in this particular batch, because as mention multiple times, I am not a fan of these type of games, but yeah, you'll see why. So anyway, we're going to start off with number 25, and that is Command and Conquer Red Alert. This was a PC game back in 1995. I grew up with this in high school. I was introduced to the game by my good friend Wayne, and yeah, I was basically hooked at it from the start. Now, again, I'm not really big on strategy games or anything like that for that matter. So for me to put a game like this in my top 25 list should tell you right there that this is a major game for me, to make me want to play it over and over again. Now, I consistently played this on Windows 95. It I The fact that you had the campaign mode, you had two different campaigns, the Allies and the Soviets, and then you also had you could even create your own maps, put it on harder difficulty, all that good stuff. Training troops, building your base, and all that, destroying your enemies and all that. It was a fantastic game, strategy game. I absolutely loved it. It was simple, direct, right to the point, and yeah, I mean, it was easy to pick up, and I just had so much fun with it. So that's why it is at number 25. Moving on to number 24, Panzer Dragoon Saga on the Sega Saturn. All I can say about this game is that, again, I'm not huge on RPG games a whole lot. I've played several in my life, much like most gamers have. However, with this one right here, it was different. Everything in the game was solo. It's not something you would normally run into in an RPG where your character is just a solo, throughout the entire game. And when I streamed this, I did a full playthrough, which, mind you, first time through it, I was managed to pull a no death run. I don't know how I did that, but the overall game itself was simple. It was a story about revenge, more or less, but my biggest thing was the dragon. The fact that you got to raise your own dragon. I love dragons. What can I say? I love them so much. But in all fairness, the fact that you got to basically train you how to train your dragon, type of thing, that's what I was kind of into about this game. Not just the story of like Edge and his way of having to get revenge, and and it just it. I mean, like I said, the story was extremely simple. Um, but the mechanics of it was very easy to pick up. How to avoid damage, how to take less damage on your little radar. If you're in the green section, you're not going to be able to take any damage. If you're in the red, you're going to take heavy damage. That kind of thing. It was very easy to pick up. You also could even like you don't want to always use your dragon's attack. You want to use edges like gun shots and stuff to if you were like targeting trying to go after a specific target versus like a disperse type of thing like the dragon actually did. And then on top of that, as you leveled up, the dragon just kept getting looked cooler, and it just looked even more awesome every single time. So it just drew me into this game so much, and just because it was so simplistic, and it just blew me away. As it is definitely probably, and I know a lot of people would disagree with me on this, but this is probably my favorite RPG of all time. And I've played Chrono Trigger, I've played Final Fantasy VII, I've played a bunch of those other ones. This one right here is my absolute favorite. So moving on to number 23, Metroid Prime. This is another one of those games that as you know, yes, I am a huge Metroid fan, but I am not a first-person shooter by any means. I cannot stand those games. I have issues playing Doom, for example, Wolfenstein 3D, those kind of games. You'll never catch me playing those things. GoldenEye. I only played GoldenEye because in the last season of the Retro Gaming League is because yeah, I had to. But basically and the same thing with Doom. You know, Doom, I basically started the game and I had to quit my run. I've literally had nightmares over those games. This game right here changed all that. Um, Kind of get me a little bit of a boost of confidence, that I can actually play first person shooters to an extent. Um, and the fact that it was Metroid, just added bonus was just an added bonus. I mean, it was why this game right here got Game of the Year in 2002. It was really well put together. Nintendo just blew us out of the water with this, much like they have with a lot of the Metroid games. And the simple fact that when you're playing a first person and they got so many things like, oh my gosh, what are they thinking? They're making a Metroid game in a first person shooter perspective. This would never work, type of thing. Nope. Completely opposite, man. It was awesome. Now, mind you, the sequels I was not very fond of. I am still excited about Metroid Prime 4, but this one right here, man, really well put together. Items are scarce throughout, or scattered throughout the planet, all that stuff, just trying to locate them and battle your way through some bosses all the way to Metroid Prime. You run into different types of Metroids. The storyline overall, the space pirates, if you actually read some of the lores on some of this stuff, it's amazing. But of course, it's not canon. The Prime series is not part of the main Metroid series. It's not actually there, which kind of makes me tie into like some of the things what I was talking about in my last segment about Metroid Rogue Dawn. In this game here, they actually talk about that a little bit. Um, how they were experimenting with like the morph ball technology and stuff, and how Samus is able to do it with her suit, her power suit, and all that, and how they were conducting research. How the space pirates were conducting research. It's the same thing what they were doing with Metroid Rogue Dawn. They were basically experimenting. Now, again, Metroid Rogue Dawn, fan made game. This is actually a Nintendo game. So, but again, it's not canon. But anyway, all that ties in. You know, Space Pirates are really trying to mimic Samus. And this just kind of just went off on that a little bit, and how she ran into the space pirates on Talon 4, how she was chasing Meta Ridley, and basically just took him out eventually, and found Metroid Prime and took him out as well. But the overall gameplay was very simple. There was little nooks and crannies like any other Metroid game, and this the first person perspective. And the other thing was it also utilized the entire controller of the GameCube, and that to me is just like, okay, it took a while to get used to. I'm not gonna lie, but overall, that didn't bother me one bit. Once I got dialed into the game, it just flowed like very well in terms of just like where to go next, where you have to go to get. Okay, I'd have to go here. I mean, they had to throw in hints though, of course, until you like play it enough, then you know what you can and can't do. Um, but yeah, that's the reason why it's number 23 on my list. It's just having a first person shooter on is had to have that such a major impact on me. As I said, I'm not a fan of Prime 2 or 3, but this one right here, whoops, there we go. I get my hand in the right position here. But anyway, that's perfectly fine. Anyway, but Metroid Prime had to be on my list somewhere because it just blew me away with what Nintendo was able to accomplish with a first person shooter in the Metroid game. It just flowed perfectly. All right, so at number 22, the original Ninja Gaiden on the NES. This was a hard choice to choose between all the three of these Ninja Gaiden games because I love all three. Three was the real challenge overall because to this day I still can't do a no death run. I can do a one death run on that game, but in terms of Ninja Gaiden here, the original just I couldn't put the other two above this one because this one was such an amazing experience to get through with the jump and slash to ninja art. Just how you had to jump between walls rather than just straight up just climb them. The only way you could climb is by going back and forth across them. And it had a really big challenge to it. Even to this day, I can relatively pull a no death run on this nowadays relatively easily, but that doesn't mean that the challenge of this game is not hard. A lot of it is just, it takes a lot of memorization, but there's also the fact that the RNG, it can really screw you over. You can memorize where stuff spawns, whatever, and stuff will respawn if you walk too far, you have to walk backwards and then forward again. Stuff will just reappear. That happens an awful lot in this game. Um, but overall, the storyline, getting revenge on his father, type of thing, and then finding out that he was actually still alive and he was just turned into a demon essentially. And yeah, hey, I can rescue him. And then he ends up dying anyway, but spoiler alert, but that doesn't take away from the overall experience of this game. I will sit here and watch people even speed run this thing and never get tired of it. It just had that kind of impact. I love this game. It's not something that's going to go away anytime soon. It had such an impact on the gaming industry with the first one. It was actually one of the first games, if not the first game, that had cinematic displays. In it, you can actually see in the first cutscene after Act One when it has the pan over Ryu's face, and then all of a sudden when he switches his eyes, you see a flicker. Like that's just that's the first time that we're introducing these kind of things into these games. It was amazing. Just to be able to follow a story like that. Hey, this was brand new. This was crazy, and this is what Ninja Gaiden brought to the table. It's just an amazing accomplishment by Tecmo compared to what the game was for the arcade. The arcade was a beat 'em up. This thing was an action adventure type of thing, and just they nailed it. They completely nailed it. Graphically, sound effects, everything. I still say to this day, the first one had the best sound effects. It had the best well, maybe not necessarily the best graphics, but sound wise, I like the sword slash sound in that one the best. The over having only the fire wheel as a temporary thing versus an actual ninja art that you can consistently use, that made Ninja Gaidens 2 and 3 a little bit easier in my book. This one, it only lasts you for like 8 seconds, and then that's it, unless you find another fire wheel, which there isn't. Generally in this, there's not generally more than one in a stage, in a level, act, whatever you want to call it. It just adds to the challenge of the overall game. The jump and slash, yeah, kind of took away a little bit if you could keep it. Um, that's the other thing, just keeping that jump and slash. Yeah, it was the best ninja art in my book, but trying to keep it when you don't know what's behind a little candle or a bird or whatever it is that you can slash and get the power up or bonus points or whatever it may be. Trying to keep that was tough enough as it is, especially when you get to the final three bosses, where once you defeat the one, then you have to move on to the second one, but you lose that ninja art, type of thing. So it just added more to the challenge. But anyway, that's why it is there in my top 25 at number 22 rather. So moving on to our final game tonight, right now, it is tonight for me right now. Moving on to number 21, Mace: The Dark Age. This is a beat 'em up game. Or not beat 'em up, I'm sorry. Totally wrong franchise. It is a fighting game. It is kind of a little bit on the clunky side, mind you. The controls definitely take some getting used to. And this game is tough. It's not easy. But it kind of felt like a Mortal Kombat with weapons. only a little bit more simplistic, like more considered like the modern Mortal Kombat games. Combo systems, each character had their own little combos that you can put together, but in the environments you can basically take damage if you fall off the stage, if you fall into a pit, type of thing. If you're against the final boss, you can get thrown off the stage. If you go too far, you can fall off of it. Just little things like that that just add to it. And then also every character has an execution in this one also, or like a fatality type of thing. um the sound effects when your blades or weapons hits your opponent, it makes that little clang sound. Just little things like that. The sound was just spot on with this game. And the funny thing is that this game was only released on one console, the N64. I bought an N64 just for this game. I'm not kidding. Not for Mario 64, not for Star Fox. I never actually really cared for any of those games when I saw them being played. It was this one. This one right here. Mace the Dark Age. I loved the game. It just fell in love with it so much. It was because it was a challenge. And I liked the fact that you have the one execution per character. You have anything from chopping a head off, cutting them in half, to even having a bird or Pojo, the chicken, basically flies off with them into oblivion, essentially. You know, little silly things like that too, or in the like little silly things like that. But overall, I said I absolutely fell in love with this game in the arcade, and I was just so sad because I didn't own an N64 up until probably about 3 4 years ago. I finally bought an N64, and I said, you know what? I was so tickled. I said, I got to find a retro shop or something like that that's going to have Mace in it, and then I can just go ahead and just buy it. And I can just, and that's what I did. I didn't buy it on eBay. I went to a retro store and I found a copy of it, physical copy. And that night, I was up till probably like 1 2 in the morning just playing Mace. Just because I had missed playing it so much. And then my huge shout out to my buddy Kyle, who actually was able to emulate Mace the Dark Age when I was over visiting him last year, during right before the summertime, and he emulated the actual arcade game like perfection. I played that thing probably 2 3 times through before, and this was like late night, 11 12 o'clock, where he was just sitting there watching me, and I just had like big old grin on my face like the whole time. I've been wanting to play that in an arcade for like so long, and here it was. I could play it just like from the arcade. Now, if I go to an actual arcade, and I see that game, darn well I'm going to be putting my quarters or whatever it takes, to play that sucker, because I love this game. It's one of my top fighting games, and I said when we get higher up, there is another fighting game in my top 25, but that will be later on as we get there. But um, I did not write reviews for these ones in particular. I'm kind of ab-libbing all of these as I go along. Um, but when we get to the top 10, I actually have written reviews for all these, and I will be reading those off again, like I have in my previous my Twitch streams and everything, when I actually did the top 10, with the exception of number one. I still haven't done that one yet at this point, but that will be coming up very soon, because I'm going to be going through all of my top 25. After this one, we'll be doing 16 through 20, and then just each segment's going to be going to the next five, and then yeah, until we get down to number one. I might do the top 10 a little bit differently, simply because the reviews, especially when we get to number four, um, because it is an extremely long review that I wrote for that game when I did it so you can actually find my top 10 list if you don't want to wait, if you want a spoiler what my top 10 games are. Well, 10 down to 2 anyway, because I haven't revealed number one yet. Well, technically I did, but anyway, you can go to my Facebook page and it'll let you, and you can see it there. It's actually one of my pinned posts on there. It has all my links to all my the different games and my actual reviews that I wrote for those games. Like I said, I put my heart into every single one of those reviews, especially with these things here. You know, I'm having a lot of fun doing these things, and I hope you haven't. I hope you guys are enjoy. Hope you all are enjoying this very much as I enjoy making these videos as well as writing these reviews for these games. It's just been a blast. I mean, some of these games you may not have even heard of. And I know there's games out there that I'm probably not even thinking about. And I said, oh crap, you know, maybe I forgot to put this one in there. Nope, this is my top 25. Clearly for a good reason. Um, I've gone through all the games that I've ever played for the most part. I'll say for the most part. I've maybe probably like 95% of the games that I've played. I really took a month to think about all of this. And now that I'm presenting it all to you. So anyway, this is 21 through 25. 25 with Command and Conquer Red Alert, 24 Panzer Dragoon Saga, 23 Metroid Prime, number 22 Ninja Gaiden, and number 21 Mace the Dark Age. And we'll be moving a next segment. We'll be going, as I said, we'll be going through 16 through 20, and we'll just continue down each segment until we finally get to number 1. So, but that's going to wrap up for this one. I hope you have enjoyed this. Do check us out on facebook.com/oneforsaken gaming, Instagram, Discord, and Twitch as well at twitch.tv/oneforsaken gaming, and right here, as always, on 1FG Archives here on YouTube. But that is it for this segment, and we will see you again soon.